On May 12th, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A few ground rules. The meeting is broadcast, so everyone's please speak into the mic clearly. Special presentations may be scheduled by the supervisor or the board. Bathrooms are to the right in the hallway. In case of fire, do not use the elevators. Walk, do not run. And please observe courtesy and decorum when speaking. Madam Clerk, read the roll.
Supervisor Evans.
Here.
Councilwoman Cunningham.
Here.
Councilman Malone.
Present.
Councilman Perticone.
Here.
Deputy Supervisor Wayner.
Here.
Attorney for the town.
Here.
Okay, will the representative for Labella come forward, please?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Wes Petty from Labella Associates. This afternoon I've handed out for you a copy of our monthly engineers update and for May 12th. So anything that's new on this update report that you have in front of you is in the bold italicized text, right? So I'm not going to go through each and every one of these projects, but if you happen to glance through this and you see something that you want to ask, that's fine. I'm happy to also take questions back to Labella if there's a particular project that you were interested about. Today, I invited Tom Miller from Labella Associates to talk a little bit about the traffic calming measures component, which is the second to the last item on the back page on the back of this sheet. And I've got some diagrams. He's prepared some diagrams here that I'll hand out to you, and you may have some questions as he talks about maybe how this project originated and what his suggestions are. So, do you have any questions on anything on this sheet right at the moment? I know you haven't had much of a chance to take a look at it yet, but I'll go ahead and hand these out, and then maybe Tom can come to the chair here and speak to this.
Why don't we just bring another chair up?
We can do that.
Just pass it. Take one down. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there another one of these?
Yes.
You can have mine.
Sure thing. I'll bring it over.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Tom Miller at Labella Associates. I'm a transportation engineer. So I work with Wes occasionally on some of the town initiatives here.
Just have to bring it closer.
Okay. I'm just here to talk a little bit about the traffic calming project we've been working on. Up on.
Excuse me, Tom.
Sure.
Just for the people at home, we looked at 3 different levels of traffic calming measures, and we chose the most cost-efficient that would be presented. So I just wanted to point that out before you start.
Sure. So the issue that was communicated to us was that you have, there's 4 roundabouts, I believe, off of Seabreeze Drive, Titus, Seneca Road, Point Pleasant, and Durand. Two of those are county roads. So our project is focusing on the town roads, Seneca Road and Point Pleasant Road. And some of the issues that were communicated to us, vehicles, especially people traveling westbound as they go through the roundabout and come out of the roundabout onto the town roads, speeds are higher than the town would like to see. These are straight and level roads, and so I guess the typical driver reaction is to step on the gas as they come out of the roundabout. And so the town was looking for low-cost measures that might address the vehicle speeds on those roads. And again, the two roads, Titus Ave and Durand Boulevard, are Monroe County roads, so any initiatives would probably need to come through the county on those. So our focus is on the two town roads. So the plans that you have there's 5 sheets. The first 3 are Seneca Road. The 4th sheet is Point Pleasant, and the 5th sheet is kind of a workup of conceptual costs for implementing some of these recommendations. And regarding the improvements, there's kind of 2 categories. One is I would call signs and striping, painting lines on the road, installing signs. And the others is related to installing pedestrian crossings at key locations that might improve safety for multimodal users and also provide visual cues for drivers. If they're seeing a lot of yellow signs, that might be a cue to slow down a little bit. So basically on both, we're recommending to install white edge lines along the road. These roads they're around 25 feet wide, and if we paint white edge lines to result in a 10-foot travel lane, you're kind of narrowing up the space, and it's kind of a visual cue for the driver to go a little bit slower because it feels more constrained. That's a very simple, just painting white edge lines is a very simple improvement. Paint's about $1 a foot, so it's a pretty low cost measure right there. And just general signage recommendations, you have a townwide speed limit of 25, I believe. Just installing some additional signs where they might be missing, or Seneca Road is a pretty long stretch there where you might want to add a couple more speed limit signs. And going along with the speed, some enforcement is kind of another piece of that where just regular enforcement. Unfortunately, we find sometimes that some of the offenders are the residents of the neighborhood. But just periodically enforcing that and making sure that people know that, you mean business and the signs, are there for a reason. The second piece that I mentioned, pedestrian crossings, the first one on Seneca Road at Rudman, we are suggesting the addition of what we would call a mid-block pedestrian crossing. It's an uncontrolled crossing, so that the traffic on Seneca Road is not stopping, but you're installing a crosswalk at Rudman to provide a kind of a path into the park, down Rudman Road and into the park. And so that crossing would involve some additional sidewalk, ramps and approaches to the sidewalk that's there, and then the typical signage that you would find at a pedestrian crossing and the actual crosswalk itself on the road. So those treatments would likely, add some visual cues to drivers to slow down a little bit and provide a safer space for pedestrians to cross the road there. And up on Point Pleasant, we're suggesting a similar crossing treatment at the school. I believe the street is Dane Street. Again, there is a crosswalk at the roundabout, but there's really no crossing in the area of the school. There's sidewalk along the north side of Point Pleasant that sort of ends mid-block, and there's nowhere to go. And if you're on the north side, there's no safe crossing. So we're suggesting maybe the addition of a crosswalk at Dane. So that's really the the summary of the low-cost stuff, there are more options, I guess, if the town at some point in the future would want to do a little bit more of an extensive project, particularly on Seneca Road. The edge of the road is currently not real defined very well. It's not curbed. And so, if there is a longer-term project on Seneca Road, maybe the addition of curbing to formalize the edge and narrow up the road a little bit, might help. There's certainly a cost to that, both the curbing and the closed drainage that would go along with that, but that's something that might be worthwhile to pursue. Also filling in missing sidewalk segments. Seneca Road, I believe the south side lacks sidewalks, so filling in those gaps, and then Point Pleasant, like we talked about, the northwest end of that doesn't have sidewalks. So there's also other sort of miscellaneous things like flashing beacon, pedestrian crossing signs, or speed feedback signs. Those would, they're tools that could be considered a little more expensive, but tools.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Where?
Sure.
How about just simple stop signs at Redmond and Woodlawn Road?
Well, something maybe to consider, we generally don't install, as traffic engineers, I just should say, we generally don't install stop signs or traffic signals for speed control.
They work. 100%.
There's,
In the enforcement
yeah,
field for 32 years, stop signs
there's
work.
pluses and minuses. People, if there's too many, you might, once they stop, they might, slam on the gas and until they get to the next one and slam on the brakes. And
After having done our speed study twice on Seneca, traffic both distances, I want to say that the perceived speed is more than actual measured speed, and really the biggest speed that we see is actually coming off the roundabout, like you said. It's nice and flat, come right off, it's, hit the apex and be able to come out through there. If I can at least stop the cars first at, the first street. I know it's a long stretch between the next street over there, but I do know the problem is as Titus Avenue gets backed up, especially in the afternoon, and people go to Seneca to be able to avoid that traffic over there, to get up Culver Road, however they need to. Quite frankly, I just think stop signs at both those intersections right there, plus, we could do the marking as far as like crosswalks and everything, but I just think the stop signs would definitely keep most people are going to follow the rules. There's always going to be some people that are not going to follow the rules and try and look at it as a race course, but for the most part, you're going to get compliance. So just my 2 cents.
there is a process for doing an always stop intersection. I guess I would say ultimately the town could probably do whatever it wanted to do on their road. But there is an engineering study process that looks at traffic volumes and safety history and all that. And we've done a couple of those for the town in the past. So yeah, definitely something to.
One of the things that we looked at, and it's mainly for the people at home, is that the behavior, we're trying to change people's behavior between stop signs. And so all the readings from like communities and traffic studies say that when people have a stop sign and they're in a rush, the people who are not compliant will slam on their brakes and then speed up faster to get to the next destination point. So in our conversations, we looked at all the other behavior tools to change the overall behavior and not maybe increase the behavior of a distracted driver or someone that's trying to rush from point A to point B, where they may look at a stop sign or a speed bump as simply an obstacle to go faster.
I agree, but living on a through street also from 2 main thoroughfares, I have 5 stop signs between my house to get to the other from both sides right there, and they seem to work pretty well. So just my 2 cents.
Is there an opportunity to put more than one stop sign along the road, like 4 or 5 stop signs at the crosswalks?
You could. Looks like there's a couple.
Well, you have 2 roads coming in there. Would they be a 3-way stop? Probably, Chief, right?
Yeah,
Three-way
that-
both intersections. You got Rudman coming in, yeah, and then, and put a sidewalk, a crosswalk in there.
Woodlawn and Redmond.
Yeah, those two maybe.
I'm just looking at cost. Instead of $81,000.
Yeah. Well, I agree.
Well, I would almost do all of the things plus the stop signs. Get the crosswalks and the sidewalks and make a bona fide intersection where people,
Yeah, a lot of that cost is the sidewalk work.
Yeah.
You know, the signs and striping is,
Yeah.
signs are, $500 a piece and striping's $1 a foot or so, so.
I figure if there's a stop sign, and especially near the school, and that's,
Yeah.
I know on the other road, but I think it would be important.
I'm sure to go forward with this, we'd probably have to have a public hearing. You think?
I think you might for the stop
Yeah, for the stop signs. Yeah, I think we should. I think we should get on it. Summer's here. If we can do this maybe next month, maybe. Do a pun then, make a decision then, but I like the idea with stop signs.
I like the
and
plan with
striping
stop signs.
and crosswalks too.
I agree.
I think that going with what we think might work and what is going to cost less, see how that goes. And then if we have to move
Absolutely.
further to additional striping or then, sidewalks.
I think the sidewalk repair would be good though. That's right.
So you're saying do the plan, no stop signs, Ann?
I'm saying stop signs.
Do the plans plus stop signs. And if we do that, then we should do the extra costs. Where there's a pedestrian crossing, we should do the flashing pedestrian sign for the extra.
The rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
Because it's not significantly more in that case. Okay,
Yeah,
That's
good.
what we got for you.
Thanks.
thank you.
Schedule a public hearing.
Did you have any questions?
Okay, so if Madam Clerk would put that on for a public hearing for next month?
Well, just a quick question here for clarity. I don't know why I have so much feedback. Who's going to take the lead on this project? Because we got stop signs, which are the police.
The
The
lead should be
study-
DPW.
Okay.
And then coordinating with the, with the police. With police? Okay, so the police has to stand corrected.
We'll start with stop signs and then, because the striping and such would definitely have to be budgeted. Okay.
Yeah, so we have two lines of operations, stop signs, traffic control, and construction of the road. So I think the longer thing is the construction of the road and coordinate with the chief for stop signs.
And Chief, does the stop signs require a public hearing? They would, correctly?
Last time we did one over in Oakland.
Yeah, because, yep,
We did one on the east
Okay?
side.
yes. No, because we're changing the code to, yeah.
Anything else on this issue? Now we into department head updates. We start from the left and go right around the ring.
Okay, I emailed everyone on the board a potential proclamation, and if it's something that I need to get put together, please let me know and I'll start it. I also emailed everybody on the board a potential change to your exemption on the veterans exemption. Roughly what it is, it allows veterans that are within the municipality receiving an exemption and they sell their home and purchase another home within the municipality to carry that veteran exemption over to the new property. I have some software upgrades that will be coming up to you at budget time, and then I also would like to, prior to budget time, possibly have an executive meeting on some staffing needs that we have. And that's it.
Dan, could I ask currently, let me understand the process right now as far as the veterans exemption. Right
Yes.
now, if you have it on a home and you sell it, you have to reapply for the new property. Is that how it works currently?
That's correct. I apologize, is that it would come off, and they would not be able to put it on until March. So this gives us, I'll say it fills that gap until March. They still have to apply
Oh,
the 1st of March.
Okay, thank you.
And this was just to give credit to, is that one of the staff members, Joan, recommended that we bring this out to you. All right.
Hi, thank you. We started our paving plan, so we milled some streets last week, and we are paving them this week. So we started on a section of Pine Grove, Oak Ridge, as well as Bellhurst. We also have 2 streets that are getting curbing, Glen Haven and Oakview, and we will be paving when the curbing is done, we will be paving them later this year. The other thing is, we are looking to, we had a meeting with the city. They are doing a study of trails along the Genesee River, and they are looking to, they've presented us a few times with where we have known connections that would connect over to this trail that goes along the city. So they are looking to finalize that plan. They said that they're gonna have some public hearings and present that plan over this summer. And when they have a draft, they will share it with us so we can share it amongst the group. And then there's still time for input and such into the plan. We also met with the city. They are looking, they have a agreement with Brighton that on roads that are close to the city town edge, that there's a partnership where whoever's the majority of the road is in, the other, like say 75% of the road would be within Arundecoit and just the last little bit would be within the city. Then what they're looking to do is have an agreement, so we would finish paving that road, you know, and I think of down in, you know, the Shelford Merchants areas is a lot, where a lot of this would happen is that the town has, the majority in the city just has the last couple hundred feet of the intersection, so they've presented us a draft of, an agreement where we would either finish milling and paving the road or oil and stone, whatever it is, we would just treat it and they would reimburse us for the cost for that section of road. This would be something that, it's not like they're not looking for it right now, it'd be something that we would implement to do next year. They're just looking for, like, because it's a lot of legwork, we would have to come up with an agreement, we would have to come up with a map where these situations occur, and then we would bring it to the board for execution. So before we put in all that legwork, is that something we would be interested in?
Do you think there's anything this year that would be in that?
We brought up a few of the roads that we are looking at, and they also have a future plan, so we were looking at maybe marrying a couple of them. If that could happen later this year, then yes, that would be kind of the priority to try and finish off. Obviously, we don't want to, you know, if there's just a couple homes within the town or within the city, then we would just bring it to the edge of Shelford or, you know, some of these other roads, just to not have that seam in the, you know, not at the intersection.
Stop and start.
You know, one of the areas, excuse me, it was along Norton, where there's like 50 feet of Arundecoit along those houses. The mayor and I talked about those being one of the areas also.
Would the other jurisdiction pay their pro rata share for the work in place, or how?
Yes, that is the agreement. So that's part of the agreement, is that we would come up with what the costs were. We would give the city our bill, and they would reimburse us. It's very similar to how we work with the county and other, yeah.
A nicer looking job, that's for sure.
Exactly, especially, yeah.
Not stop and
The
start.
city is, you know, I think why they approach us is they have a pretty aggressive schedule to they said they're replacing their water lines. Lead water lines and
2030.
correct. That is, so I think they're gonna have a lot of these situations that we could, if we're gonna be in the area, we're gonna be doing that road, then we could finish it for them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get them to finish St. Paul then for us, right?
Yeah,
We'll bring,
yeah, don't bring
But-
that up.
so I'll give them the go-ahead and we'll
Yeah,
start
sure.
developing
Good
the map
idea.
and such. Awesome. What else did I have? One of the other things is we got grants to do EV chargers, and we moved one, so we're gonna increase the charger here at Town Hall. We're looking to add, it was originally for one plug. We're looking to see if we can add a few more plugs. And this grant is from the New York State DEC. We also got the grant from McAvoy. But in looking at the infrastructure and other things that are gonna be needed, McAvoy, the dollar value that we got, we don't think, we're pretty confident is not going to be enough to finish to do the whole project. And in talking with, Michael from Labella, it was, we could have a chat with the DEC, and he didn't think that there would be a problem to just say, we think we want to look at the site better and have a idea on what this new service would cost to bring in the EV charger to that site, and then we could apply at a future date. Because the service, I guess, there's really no way to know exactly right now on how much it would cost. I mean, it could be thousands or tens of thousands to more. So that was one of the things looking for, if we want to have a conversation with DEC and just postpone that.
So you're saying the electric service at McAvoy is not adequate for charging stations?
Yes, that is. But in our EV study throughout town, McAvoy was one of the locations that we thought that got identified that had a lot of attraction to have an EV charging station.
I'm just somewhat surprised there's not some electrical capacity there, since we replaced all the lights with LED, which should have a lower.
It's not the capacity, it's the overall link with the community, the grid structure. So even though it's a perfect location for an EV charger, but the grid structure doesn't allow that extra charge. So we're looking at the two things: is it a good place to go, and can the electric structure handle that extra EV? And that's where the question is, and that's where the coordination with RG&E and the other players come in at, to figure out if we can actually expand that capacity, which will benefit
So
the community.
you're saying the electric grid does not have the capacity to add an EV charger in McAvoy Park?
I don't have the information right in front of me, but there was something with, and you can correct me if we're wrong, or if I'm not describing this incorrectly. But we did this study to find out where the electrical capacity is, best place to put EV. We crossed that with the best place that people want EVs, that they will use them at. And certain locations could not handle the electrical structure of a new EV based on what was being used already. But they needed extra capacity from RG&E or whoever the electrical suppliers are. Is that accurate? Or?
That seems the way I understand as well, yes.
All right. I find it hard to believe, because you can put an EV in your house, and an EV charger is not significant electrical draw. We've decreased our electrical draw there. It may be not the best location, McAvoy Park, for proximity to users, but I can't believe it would be an electrical grid or even a service. I mean, a size maybe upgrade, but I don't see that as being the issue. But
I can quantify, and I can send out something to make sure I'm saying the right thing, but that was okay. What else do I have? Our DPW open house is this Saturday, so, just a reminder, bring out your kids, families, or anyone that can stop by. It's from 11 to 2. Yeah, that's everything I had.
I just wanted to go back to the trails and the meeting with the city. Thank you for inviting me to sit in on that. I think it's really exciting to be able to think about connecting that whole trail so that you can get from the city down to Seabreeze. And I just wanted to comment that I was blown away by our DPW staff and their knowledge of the area and the trails and the understanding of all of the spots where people can get in and out of of the trails. So it's if this is something that we're able to move forward, I think it's really exciting. So thank you.
All right, recertification paperwork and the information required was submitted to the state of New York for us to recertify as a pro-housing community. We haven't heard any feedback, so the presumption is that we are just recertified based on that. If I hear any different, I will certainly share that. On Friday afternoon, I met with Empire State Development regarding our Restore New York application for the Hudson Titus Avenue area, if you remember that from last year. We were not selected, obviously, but I did get some good feedback from them. They provided us with some guidance on programs that might be more appropriate than what we submitted. Some of the shortcomings that they identified on that application included some things that are in our control, some that are not. Those included a lack of diversity in the proposed developments that were included, a greater need for public infrastructure proposals, which I found to be somewhat interesting. And then the neighborhood, they view it as extremely car-centric, which doesn't align with their Restore New York principles. So something to consider. Generally, they look for a more village-type atmosphere that is more walking-friendly. And, you know, certainly that is one of our more walking-friendly areas, so I was surprised to hear that feedback. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been working pretty hard to reestablish a good partnership with the Irondequoit Chamber of Commerce. I'm pretty happy with the progress we made in a short period of time. Thanks to Councilwoman Cunningham and Councilman Perticone for assistance with this. We've done a number of events with them over the last couple of weeks, and I know that we have a bunch more planned over the next month or so that's encouraging. Looking forward to seeing some high visibility projects cross the finish line over the next month. The biggest one of note that's most visible, again, in that Hudson Titus area, Little Bits Coffee and Capone's at the former Cooper Deli. We anticipate those to open sometime this month, if not early June. So that's exciting. I attended the Irondequoit Neighborhood Roundtable last week. We had a lot of good discussion with that group. They're certainly passionate members of our community, and I shared a lot of the projects that we're working on throughout town and a lot of the things that we discuss here. They were encouraged by a lot of the work that's being done, so I found that to be a pretty enriching experience. And then a couple other items. We continue to see public comments stream in regarding small cell applications. I understand, obviously, that it's a hot button issue here in town. Those are being forwarded to the boards as we receive them. That's both the planning board and yourselves. What I will say in terms of a feedback from a personal level is my team is having a difficult time with the visceral nature of the verbal feedback that's being provided by citizens. I want to remind people that we understand the passion, we empathize with the situation, but we're the conduit for the information. We're not the decision makers, and we are not the applicant. So if people could keep that in mind as they request information from specifically my department is, you know, as people are asking for information, we're giving them the feedback as quickly as possible. We're responding generally within less than a business day, sometimes a little bit longer if, you know, somebody's off or something like that, but generally it's within 24 hours. So, you know, we're doing the best that we can, but again, we aren't the applicant or the decision maker, so please just keep that in mind as you interact with the staff in community development. And then the last thing, Labella did discuss grant costs associated with some potential future grant applications. I forwarded that to the board in about mid-April. I had not heard any feedback on that. I don't know if we want to discuss it now or later during the informal discussion. But I think some of those were worthwhile endeavors, and certainly their assistance makes it more likely that we would receive the funding that I think would go a long way towards improving certain parts of the community we're looking to improve. So if we want to discuss it now, we can. If we want to wait till later, that's fine.
After Wes left, yeah, I did have some questions about that grants. I know the one about, we talked about our, you know, updating zoning and all that, and there was a grant out there that he thought we should go for
Yes, so
before he starts moving forward.
So the feedback from the state of New York and Empire State Development was specific to the Smart Growth Grant to update our comprehensive plan. The indication is it would benefit us the most to do our comprehensive plan before going any further with our code update. because aligning the two of them will go a long way for future grant funding. So that was item number one. The Main Street Technical Assistance Grant was to look into updating our Seabreeze neighborhood plan. It was done, I think, in like the late 90s. It was fairly extensive, but it hasn't been looked at since, and I think that's an area of the community that is a, point of pride, and there's a lot we could do there. So that was the second item that was listed. And then the third one was the Empire State Development Strategic Planning Grant. That goes along the same line of thinking. And the feedback, like I said, I received about the Hudson Titus was there might be other parts of town that might be more ready for a positive grant funding application. So those were the only three they included in that.
So the comprehensive plan, Bill, obviously, there's probably a lot of competition to go, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
So did they give you a cost, what they have to do to proceed with that?
So that was a $3,500, and that would be matching dollar for dollar what we put into it, the grant.
So to proceed on the grant at 7,000?
No, 3,500.
3,500?
Yeah, so then whatever it would cost us to do the actual comprehensive plan, the grant would match dollar for dollar what we
I
put
see,
in.
when you go to do the plan itself, you
Yeah.
mean, okay.
Yeah.
I get it, okay. And we don't know how time frame it takes to get it back, to hear anything coming back, though, you know what I mean? Once we apply
I mean,
for the
back
grant.
from New York State or back from Labella?
Well, from the state,
We don't, and we also have no guarantee that would be included in the budget.
yeah, okay.
I believe the feedback I received through hearsay was that Restore New York might not be coming back for another round. So, take that for what it's worth. That might be a budget casualty.
Well, we did commit to a code update, right?
We did.
Right.
Yeah.
With them, so that's gotta be on the table to do that, right?
And
So,
I still have not seen a draft of the first round of funding that was put into the code update. We still have a second one that was approved by the board
right.
to do. So
But that's on hold until this, right?
well, the feedback was it wouldn't affect this first round, but that it would go to be more beneficial to do round two, which is the larger expenditure.
Larger of it, okay.
I think we gotta really seriously consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to bring it for discussion. I'm not actually bringing a resolution or anything, but obviously some of these have time constraints on them, none of which I think are coming up in the very near future.
Budget where it is.
July 31st is when the first set of those would be application deadlines.
So are you asking for our authorization to proceed on those, or what do you?
I am not. I'm just asking for feedback to see if this is even a feasible or a level of interest where we would pursue funding.
Well, one second. I think we've already decided several months ago to move forward with this. So I'm not sure why we were talking about it again, because we already discussed doing the study for comprehensive plan. We're ready to move forward on the pro-housing. We're ready to move forward on the New York Forward and to rehash that. So we've already made those decisions last fall during the budget cycle. So I'm kind of confused why we were bringing out
These-
things that already been decided.
These are unbudgeted costs. The ones that we submitted, we've already paid for. So the New York Forward, which was for Skyview, that was paid for.
I don't disagree with you, but when we did the plan, we did it with the long-term strategy in place, that the first, second, and third steps. So you're discussing the third steps that we already said after we finish point A, then we do point C, and those things are already decided. I brought that to you guys, and you said, sound like that's a good plan going forward. So we're already decided to go forward. So are we reconsidering deciding something that we already said yes to?
Well, it's here for discussion. It's brought up again to us.
And it's unbudgeted. That's why I'm asking.
Right.
This is money that is not in my budget to
Right.
spend for these grant services. So if it's something we wish to, it would have to come out of the general fund, which I would need
Yes.
board approval.
So it's 25, 25, and 35, right? So it's 8,500 you need for all three.
Correct.
Okay.
And really, the money that would come back to the town would be significantly
Well-
more than that.
And there's no guarantee on that, though.
Right.
Right. okay with it.
I am too. I think we need to move forward.
Any further discussion?
Bill, the only question I have, I know there's some interest out here, right, the planning board this evening, correct, for the, what, there's a planning board, they don't have any more, from my understanding is they don't have any more information
To my knowledge,
to your,
the-
okay, from
for,
Crown
we're talking about
Castle.
small cells?
Small cells,
Okay,
yes,
so
correct.
to my knowledge, and I believe it to be accurate, there was no materials submitted by the applicant that were requested by either board, whether that be the town or planning board. So they missed the deadline to be discussed at both this meeting and the
Right.
planning board. So
Okay.
I don't believe the planning board plans to
So they're not
discuss.
gonna have an open, no discussion on it this evening.
And that also is impacting our meeting next week, too.
Right.
So there, so
I mean, the
while
public
we-
hearing was left open.
that's right. We
That's
kept-
right.
Yes, and that was my point. We kept that
I
open.
don't wanna waste these people's time as well.
Yeah, they have brought nothing forward that was requested by either board.
Okay.
And my knowledge is the deadline to submit for the June meeting is tomorrow, and we have seen nothing submitted further for that as well.
Is there still a matter before the town board?
I think there is.
I'd like to hear from the attorney.
So presently there is, but I have a message. So I just came.
Excuse me, just a minute. There's a lot of conversation, and if we could just keep that still so we could hear our town attorney. Thank you.
So I think technically there still is, and it's open, but I'm having discussions with Crown Castle's counsel. I have left a second voicemail today. I believe I followed up with an email, a bounce back I got was that he's out of town until Thursday. So I hope to have a discussion with him about a number of things, including the shot clock, including the timing of when they will plan to come back before both boards. Ultimately, they may not need to come back to the town board, but I'm working that out with them because of the way our code is written. But my understanding is that they have missed the deadline for any discussion at this board's meeting next week, right? Or for May, for any of the meetings.
So I have a schedule, I have a submission date schedule, and the submission date for the planning board is tomorrow, May 13th. The submission date for the town board is Wednesday, the 14th, which will put them on the June agendas. Now, I'm a little bit flexible with those dates, give or two a couple days, but this is where we're at right now. I haven't received any new documentation thus far. I've been in communication with them as that all the information that I'm receiving from residents is being forwarded to them as well. The petitions, we've been receiving the public comment, resident comment and everything. So they are aware of all the comments that have been submitted as well as the petitions, and they are planning on getting it in by tomorrow or Wednesday by 4 p.m. I gave them at the latest.
So I thought there was some research post last town board meeting that a special permit is not required for these small cells.
I don't believe one is required.
So therefore, there would not be a matter before the town board.
Per our town attorney, I interpreted the code differently, being a standard cellular communications with a pole and antenna is why I recommended to Crown Castle to submit application to the town board for a special use permit per our town code. But there is also another section regarding the micro cell, small cell antennas where it just requires site plan approval and not both approvals. So you could interpret the code.
It was like a layered approach.
Yep.
When the code was revised in 2019, maybe.
2019.
That says, it defines different types of applications, a standard application and a microcell application. And my understanding is that these are microcells. And if they're microcells, then you look at what type of application is required. So a microcell, basically that's the new part of the code, is that the microcell only requires site plan. If you have a standard cell tower, then it requires, the special use permit from this board. So ultimately, I don't believe that this board will have a decision to make in the matter, but they have not withdrawn that part of the application. And I have talked to that with them, and they were not ready to discuss it before the last meeting.
The public has the impression that the town board has a horse in this race, which we may not.
I think you may not. My opinion is that you don't, based on the way that the code is written. And so it's up to the planning board to decide, and they're rather limited because the use is already determined by your code, and it's really just the site plan is what's before the planning
So
board.
if it comes between the planning board and the town board, we both say no, then where do we go from there? We don't give
Well,
them
there's
any
nothing to
site.
say no for, the
Right.
town board,
Well,
that's the problem.
In
Right.
case there is, if there is a site plan approval.
Yeah,
or-
so if the code interpretation is correct, that there is no special use permit required for these microcell applications, then there is nothing for this board to consider. The only thing that the planning board is considering is site plan approval.
plan.
And so site plan approval considers things like aesthetics, location, but the use question, whether or not these are permitted in this particular zone, that's already addressed in your code and they're allowed. And so it's really a question of, the site plan.
So if, it depends on how we feel about them.
It doesn't
Right.
depend on how we feel. We don't feel
They're in a
anything.
code.
We could feel all we
We
want.
could change the
Right.
code.
We can't do anything about it.
So they have.
Hands are tied.
So they have there's an agreement already in place that this board approved, the prior board approved with Crown Castle to allow them to come into the right-of-way and town right-of-way. And then the only thing then left for them to do is where they need a new pole is to get site plan approval. And that's how I read your code.
And that's why we got all the attention to this because of the poles.
That's right.
Right? They're
New.
using existing poles.
They're
I'm
right.
assuming.
So they have already, my understanding is that they have, so there's even even a lower level of, so there's like a tiered approach, remember? So if there's an existing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if there's an existing pole and they're just going to put the antenna on the existing pole, then they only need administrative approval. Is that right?
Correct.
And I believe that that's still covered by I don't know if that's covered by our agreement as well, with the right-of-way. And that might just be worked out between the utility and Crown Castle. But my understanding is there's some 40-odd antennas already going up around town that has its only administrative approvals required. And I haven't looked at what those standards are, but I think they're rather, it's just, you can check the boxes in the code, basically. It's not really a discretionary approval.
So as far as this evening, there won't be any discussion because they
No,
haven't
sir.
gotten back. on
No,
this.
sir.
Okay.
So the planning board won't be talking about it tonight or their other meeting in May.
And Michelle, I appreciate that you are being flexible with the applicant, but there's a timeline. And if they're not getting the information in on the correct
time.
time,
I'm gonna suggest to them when I talk to them that they ought to, I think in some ways they ought to withdraw their application and come back when they're ready.
Right.
Because we're on edge, because we have this deadline and it's kind of hurry up and wait.
Exactly.
But then they get us on the deadline, they get us on the clock, but then they have not really submitted a complete application and still have yet to submit a complete application. They may do that tomorrow, but I don't even know what they're going to submit. So I'm going to suggest to them that they ought to just withdraw and then come back when they're ready, because they're not ready. And there's a lot of questions now. There's already a lot in the record that they can't just come back with the same thing and have everybody go through the same public comments again, because they're already kind of on notice what the issues are. So,
and I think we were very clear between the town board and the planning board, what we were asking, what information we were
Yes,
asking for.
yes.
So there should be no question about what additional information is needed for the planning board to make a decision.
And that was reiterated to them via email
Of
by
course.
myself.
Of course.
And they, I mean, the planning board requested all that material before their public hearing, so.
Yes.
It was at the workshop, I believe.
Yes, yes.
And my understanding is the planning board is the correct place for the people to put their attention towards.
That's correct.
I agree. Because
But it's not a question, of whether or not the use is permissible, because your code says it is. And
Not
you'd
only
be
our
hard
code,
pressed,
it's the FCC.
you'd be hard pressed
Federal
to say
government.
otherwise. That's correct.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I got
agree.
right. I didn't mean
I
our
do,
code.
It's not
right.
our code, it's
I do
private.
believe we need
Because
to
you
be
don't have-
careful about that.
Well, but there are certain things that can be regulated, but not these small cells. They're like mandated to
Sure.
go into the right of way like that under the FCC orders, which I understand there have been some litigation, and I'm still going to look at some of those, some of the litigation.
Right.
Based on
Right.
I know that the RF radiation was a concern.
So I do believe that this is at the federal level. And there may be, I can't speak for our legislators, but I would be pelting them with emails, because it's not at our level.
Federal.
It's at the federal level, not at the state level. This is federal, our federal legislators.
The problem is that it's preempted. So they enact the law that then, trumps the lower, the state law and the town law.
So we are hearing you, we are reading your emails, we share your concerns, but there is not a lot that we can do.
I guess I would say, though, too, to the extent that they want to make comments to the planning board, they need to look at, and I didn't bring my code provisions with me tonight, but there is a provision in, is it 235 dash, I don't remember what the code, there is a section of the code that outlines what is required for different types of applications. And so site plan is included in there, and they have a bunch of things that they need to show in order to meet the requirements. So it's still not a rubber stamp, but there's criteria there. So anybody wishing to comment should look at those criteria and try to tailor their comments to address those issues, because that's what the board is going to be considering. I don't know if you have that.
I hope that's helpful for those that are here.
So, site plan review starts at, section, it's 235-80 and goes all the way through to 235-89 for site plan.
And now there's a specific provision, though, I think, in the part of the zoning ordinance that deals with the telecommunications facilities.
Yes, sir.
And that's what you cited there. Because
It was site plan, but the telecom,
I think under the telecom chapter, there is a paragraph or a subsection that lists additional criteria, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's an administrative review. Here it is, yep. 235-135. Regarding site plan, section B, it says site plan approval.
Right.
And it requires A through H.
And so that's the criteria that the planning board is going to be charged with evaluating.
And anyone in the public can find our zoning ordinance for free online at eCodes 360, correct?
Correct. There's a link right on our website to the town code as on the first page.
And if you just Google Arundecoit Town Code, chances are you'll get the E-code link right that way, too.
If there's any amendment to the zoning code, all the more reason to, Bill,
Yeah.
get some grants.
To stop
and,
this.
to start updating our zoning
Yeah.
code.
This is one right here.
Necessary to align with better practices
Yeah.
currently.
Hey.
If they withdraw, I see that microphone.
Yes, sir.
If they were to withdraw we could certainly look at this specific small cell portion of the code.
Right.
Because that is one that was written, I'm not sure how many years ago, but it might be worth taking a look at to see what, neighboring communities do, as well as what makes most sense for here, based on the feedback that we're hearing.
Yeah. Well, just, not that this matters much, but I think the folks, the residents spoke loud and clear, because I was, right after we had the town board meeting, the planning board meeting, I was on Pinecrest, because I live right there, and there were some Crown Castle folks there looking around, and they said they're looking into it, and I think that these folks that had the issues and that live close to these things really spoke loud and clear to the Crown Castle that you better, we're not going to put up with what you want here. You better change your ways or do something alternative to what you're proposing here. So kudos to everybody that spoke. They were there the next day walking up and down Pinecrest. I saw them there. So I did talk to them. So good job to everybody. I think this is a hot button.
Very hot.
And I understand. I live right by a couple of them. They're going to go, so I understand it. So you send a message to these people, these folks. They know that what they have on the table now is not gonna fly. So that's good.
I know I'm frustrated about this, but, the town board, I don't think has, a way of, controlling these or prohibiting or et cetera. So planning board is where people's attention is correctly applied. I think that's a good clue to look into those sections of the code as it relates to site plan approval and really, see how you can influence these.
Anything else from development?
Yeah, if I could. Peter, could you explain, I've gotten educated about this, and the health concerns are what I'm concerned about with our residents, and you mentioned at the planning board meeting, Peter, could you speak on the study the one in place right now, which I believe is it 1996? Was that the last study the FFC did? Is that accurate? And what's the process if you wanted to challenge that? You mentioned it has been challenged. Where are you with that? Because to me, it's a big health concern.
Right. So my understanding is that the last time the FCC studied that was back in the 90s. And I also understand that there was a case, I can't remember the name of the case, but I have it in my office, and that dealt with the question about, to what extent that issue can be reviewed. I don't know that specifically answers the question for us and what we would be able to do, because we're still constrained by the FCC orders. Those orders, I'm going off my memory here. I don't have this. It's I believe that they were challenged and upheld by the Ninth Circuit. So those were the FCC orders that required the small cells, among other things. But I am familiar, I know that there's this other case that addressed the RF radiation and dealt with the fact that the study was, really it's kind of stale.
Yep.
So I need to look at what application that would have in a small cell, and under this FCC rule, what is the extent of that decision, and how does that potentially impact the location of the small cells like this. But even so, one of the things that we talked to the planning board about is the importance of getting our own RF engineer.
100%.
And that would be something that would need to be authorized, because I think that we want to, so they're going to supply us with, testing information, but we're not experts in how to evaluate what that means. And so I think it's important that the town have its own expert that can help the planning board to evaluate the information, because, what if it, where are the measurements taken? Are they taken at street level?
That's right.
And, or are they taken at the plane of the antenna? And so if there's a difference there, and we want to make sure that we're not sending, we want to make sure that we're measuring it at the appropriate place where it's going to have potential impact, and make sure that if it violates, the FCC requirements on the distance, that we don't allow it to go there. But I think we need to retain our own RF engineer, and that's something we talked about after the last planning board
Aren't
meeting.
those engineering reviews something that could be reimbursed by the applicant?
There you go. Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
To kind of wrap up, I mean, we understand the constraints that we're under. I'm hearing what people are saying about the RF radiation. I'm trying to make sure we navigate, through this course the right way, and that we protect the residents to the maximum extent we can within the confines of the law. And so that's what I'm going to help the planning board to do.
Can I just ask a question procedurally? We had public input, a public hearing, and we kept that open. Legally, what do we need to do as far as that goes?
I think I'd like to answer that question at the next meeting.
Okay, perfect.
So my hope would be that they would just withdraw that portion of the application.
all right.
And it kind of renders it moot.
Okay.
I'll know more after I converse with council.
I just
on
want to
that.
make sure that we're not going to get hung up that way too, so.
Right. But it was important to leave the hearing open.
Yes.
To the extent that we,
Absolutely.
if we were going to be coming
Absolutely.
back to it, we didn't have all the information.
Yeah.
Still don't.
Right.
Okay, anything else from the 11th? Okay, HR?
So, well, wait, but before we move on from development services, are we talking about
Short-term.
Airbnb regulations at this meeting now or in open discussion?
I recommend doing an open discussion because there was a question, and Peter and I spoke about this earlier today, that we've had a year moratorium, a year of study, and I think it's time to decide. And one of the tentative rejections, it wasn't an outright rejection, so I talked to Peter, I don't think we should extend the moratorium. That's my feeling. I think we have enough information to make a decision or to chart a way forward to make a decision, but extending the moratorium, I think, would be just kicking the can down the road. I think there's no new information that's going to come in. So I think we just have to decide how we're going to do it. We're already past the timeline that we laid out back in January, so we just need to figure out how we're going to finish it. So I think we'd like to do it in an open discussion.
Can I just make a comment while we're, so the risk though, so let's say, depending on what option you choose, what direction you want to go, if you go with an all-out ban, you already have that local law drafted. So if that's your decision, you could do that. If you decide that you want to make a code that is similar to Town of Canadice or Town of Geneva or some of these other ones, then you have a problem because your moratorium is going to expire, and then you could have new B&Bs sprouting up after the moratorium expires before you have the new code in place. So
I've counted 3 houses that are advertising. Sorry, one on Culver that's advertising would be perfect for Airbnb. So, that's my concern about making a decision and just getting whatever.
Except they can't do that right now.
Yeah, but they're advertising it. It's on the
Okay.
board as a realtor board. The other thing, Peter, we need to talk about equal protection clause. So we do limit it. One of the questions is we do limit it somehow, allow and limit. What does that do to affect the equal protection clause? How does the equal protection clause come in at? We can save that for later.
yeah, I think
Just a
so.
thought.
That type of discussion is probably a discussion you want to have in an attorney-client session where we talk about the different risks and which, because there's different restrictions you can have, and what is the risk that would be challenged as unconstitutional. There have been a number of challenges based on takings, based on treating out-of-state people different. So that's a discussion that's better had in private.
Okay. Okay, are we,
Okay, thank you.
all right? HR.
Okay, I'll be brief. We're pretty much in every stage of the hiring process and with different employees. We have some job postings out there for deputy court clerk and a part-time rec assistant. We have some interviews probably taking place over in DPW for an MEO, and we've onboarded some seasonals in DPW. We'll be moving to the rec seasonals when we get a little further, closer to that. The only other thing I'd like to mention is we are in the middle of our United Way campaign. And thank you, Grant, for attending the kickoff. Hopefully our employees will be generous this year. It's important to us.
It's important to the community,
Absolutely, all of us.
especially
Yep.
now. The need is there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the name of the game in rec right now is Summer. We just, speaking to Jason's point, this past Saturday, we just interviewed approximately 30 summer staff candidates for camp this summer. So we met some great young people that are interested in coming to work with our kiddos and looking forward to moving forward in the process and getting those guys lined up and trained for summer camp. Speaking of United Way, this Thursday is the annual United Way Day of Caring, where Recreation, partnering with DPW, will be welcoming approximately 120 volunteers to come into town and to help clean up 5 different locations in town. So that takes place this Thursday from 9 to 12. Memorial Day is just around the corner, so just a reminder that parade is Sunday the 25th at 3 o'clock. Kicks off at Arundecoit High School, and the reviewing stand is here in front of Town Hall. And then the Memorial Day service at the cemetery is Monday the 26th at 9 a.m. And then finally, Recreation just today launched our new member management software program. So we're looking forward to a new system that's going to provide some more functionality and will be easier for both public and staff to utilize. But there is, a great deal of work that goes into getting folks' accounts updated. So we're working through that right now. We're all hands on deck. And we appreciate everyone's patience as we get their accounts where they need to be so we can move forward with the new system. And along those lines, I just want to give a shout out to Megan Hoffman of the Recreation staff. She's pretty much single-handedly built this program and trained the entire staff on how to use it. And it's a lot of work, and she's been putting in a ton of energy and work. And I think people don't realize, she works on the back end of things. So I think people don't realize really how hard she works and how much she cares about our town and our programs and our department. So I just want to publicly acknowledge her. She's been a wonderful asset, and she's done a really nice job with this project. So.
Thank you to her and to all your staff for the work that you've all put in for the benefit of our community. So thank you.
Thank you. We're in the middle of doing our enhanced in-service. We chose not to do it with the rest of the county because we have all of our own instructors. We have our own stuff that we want to do. We want to do town-specific stuff. So we're concentrating on a lot of defensive tactics, weapons retention. We're doing a lot of work in our mat room that we have just recently built. We're also doing vehicle extractions, which are something that they don't really teach too much at the state level, and we want to do it in a safe and effective manner instead of just pushing, pulling, striking, doing all the good stuff. So our officers are really into it. We're utilizing reality-based training methods with simulations and everything else, and the officers are really think they're really excited about our training. So guys are getting some good stuff there. So this is the start of Police Week. Tomorrow night we'll be attending a candlelight vigil out at the Gates Police Department at 8 o'clock. That goes in conjunction with the National Candlelight Vigil. So we'll be there. And then Wednesday we'll be at the Rochester Police Locust Club at noon. They shut down Lexington Avenue and having a little service out there for all the fallen officers for last year. So good. We're just trying to get through some shortages as far as family medical leave. Seems like everybody's having babies all at the same time, so it's a joyous time, but it's also hurts when I'm paying all the overtime. So, but we'll get through it, no problem. Officer Laura Pantane just finished her FTO program, and she graduated from the academy on Friday, so that's great. Leaves one open spot. So we're actively looking to see if we can put somebody in the next recruit class, or we're actively looking at a little bit easier for us to be grab lateral officers. So we're in a good spot as far as personnel as far as our authorized numbers. So I think we're right up there. But we did receive some, I don't want to say bad news this week from the New York Ag and Markets. We had put in for a grant through the animal industry to be able to get money to fund our last part of our kennels that we need to be, we need to establish an isolation area for any new dogs that are brought in. And so we had put in to have the Ag and Markets grant pay for that. And at this point, our application was not granted. So we're going through review to find out where we might have actually, can do some improvements there. But what that leaves us is by the end of this year, we will be in non-compliance with New York State. I have all of the quotes. It's going to be about $40,000 worth of work that needs to be done. That includes some HVAC, very minor HVAC, little electrical, and we also have to do an epoxy on the floor and cut into one of the existing floor drains that are out there. So nothing major, but it's something that we have to put on our radar for by the end of this year. So the people from Ag and Markets have been actually they work with us quite well. They give us a chance to actually come into compliance. That's what they did with our previous work. So we'll have to see what we can do to try and go forward with this.
Chief, when did you get those quotes? How old are those quotes?
The quotes were from, I think they were from December of this year,
Okay,
or December, November, yeah, so they're gonna have to be updated.
All right.
But, so it was about 40.
We're gonna need to go forward with something there, right?
Okay, I can get all the quotes updated and we can,
Yeah,
can reapproach
okay.
you guys.
So Chief, is completion date at the end of the year, or is there a grace period? What's the time frame for that?
New York State's,
It's it.
New York State.
December 2025 is.
Yeah, they had all these unfunded mandates that New York State came through a couple years ago. We've been working towards them. That's why I think Greece built their whole new facility. Webster built theirs. We had the facility, we just needed to do the upgrades. And so this is going to be the most cost-effective way to do it.
If you'd like me to look over your shoulder in any of that, I'm very familiar with the Greece facility.
Yes, you are. Yeah, we have the room. We actually have one of the offices right inside there. We already have the site located. The floor drain is right there, so you're talking about maybe a 10-foot cutout to be able to get inside there. So it's pretty simple.
Basically, some means and methods that we can, I don't know, I can talk to you about. But there's some of that.
I can work a cutouts off, sir. Yep, good. That's it.
Any questions? Madam Controller?
Thank you. In our office, we're just finishing up the 2024 annual audit. I have the draft statements in my office that I'm reviewing now. We have our audit committee meeting scheduled for May 21st. After that meeting, the statements will be finalized and presented to the board in June. We are also working on the CDBG plan for 2025 to 26. We still do not have an allocation from the federal government. We have scheduled the plan, so we are ready to move forward when the allocation is made available. We have our public hearing scheduled next week for this. We based our plan on the current year allocation, so we do have contingencies in there should the amount we receive be higher or lower. Other than that, it's business as usual.
Do we think there's any chance that that whole program's just going to be, rocked by big cuts?
Sure. I mean, if we think about what we're seeing at a federal level, absolutely.
Yes, this is one of the programs that he tried to eliminate in the first term, so the chances are high they'll be reduced.
Less?
Madam Clerk?
So in the clerk's office, it's basically business as usual. We're continuing to collect taxes up until May 31st, 2025. And then just keep in mind, if you are looking to have a passport or marriage license, we do that by appointment and we are booked. So make sure you call to get those appointments.
I just wanted to say I attended last month's library board meeting. So, we talk about impacts and cuts at the federal level. So far, so good, but I think that changes on a day-to-day basis. So we have another board meeting, I think, coming up next week. So I'll have more information then.
If I could, Andre, this is maybe for you or for Jason, but there's some concerns about two of our town employees, Kimberly Miranda and Ramella Cameron. Are they full-time employees or are they part-time employees, and is there a job description for them? We're just curious because we're kind of in the dark on that.
Let's talk about that in the executive session, like. That's a personnel issue. That shouldn't be discussed in open forum.
Well, we've tried to bring it up, and that's why we're bringing it up again. Thank you.
Mr. Perdigo?
Questions. One question I have, we've been talking about this for the last couple months. We have authorized you to take some training, supervisor review, schedule anything?
Again, that's a personnel matter. We can discuss that in executive session.
That means no.
And the bottom line is that as an elected official, if you think about the AOT training, I did not say you must attain AOT training, because an elected official cannot force another elected official to do anything. The people elected us individually. Mr. Weiner?
I guess one of the things that we can request are, by law, is basically an accounting of, and I know this is not, I think that this is not necessarily a personnel matter, but of people's time effort on the job, and I think that it would include, yourself, as well as Kimberly and Ramella, just like it.
Again, that's a personnel issue. We can discuss that in executive session. Any other questions?
This is a report that can be requested. I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
I got it. That's a personnel matter.
I'm speaking.
It's a personnel matter we can discuss in executive session.
I'm not speaking of anything related to personnel. This is a report that you can produce for the town board, not a personnel matter.
Any other questions?
And I'm requesting this perhaps by the town board meeting for our.
Any other questions? Ms. Wescher?
Okay, so I have a couple of updates. I still have a long laundry list of things to do, so I'm continuing to work through that. But I am pleased to report, the chief reported to me, and I heard from Defense Counsel, Insurance Defense Counsel is representing the town, and a pretty small, it was a small claims court matter, and that was dismissed, I think, last week. Or early this week. It was last week. Sorry, because this is early this week today. It was last week. There was a significant backlog of parking tickets. I sent one of my colleagues over to town court, and we, cleaned out a lot of those. So hopefully there will be hopefully less of them to manage, and I think a lot of those were disposed of. And so we're happy to report that. I mentioned I have a voicemail into the council for Crown Castle to discuss some of the things we talked about earlier. So I am trying to work through that with them. And we do have a signed contract for the Kings Highway purchase. We have a signed contract signed by the seller. We're just waiting for they scanned it in a way that wasn't as legible, so we're asking for a cleaner copy of that, and my colleague's working on that, real estate attorney, and once we get that, we'll have Andre sign that. And that should close relatively soon, because I think we already have the abstract of title, so hopefully that we can check that off the list. Finally, I had a suggestion or a thought that I think we should consider making some changes to the procurement policy as part of it's part of your code. A lot of towns don't have a specific procurement policy as detailed as yours, and it is very detailed, but because you are required to have one, but not every town has it in their code. And there are a couple things that I think we should consider making, including a provision that we encountered last week when I was looking at the possibility of having the town participate in a consortium purchase. So the town, or the procurement statute, the main one, Section 103 of the General Municipal Law, provided for, it expanded the ability to use what we colloquially refer to as piggybacking. And a lot of these piggybacking contracts, especially the ones that are out of state, which you can use through this provision, required, they are let through best value contracting. And best value is something a little bit different than lowest responsible bidder. Now, you can also use, within New York, you can make purchases and you can do a set of specifications that use a best value criteria also, instead of lowest responsible bidder for service, for purchase of goods. But the only way you can use that is if you pass a local law authorizing the use of best value. So I think that is something that this board should pass, is there an amendment to the procurement policy to at the very least allow for best value purchasing, because I stopped my analysis once I realized we don't have best value in this. When you're purchasing from an out-of-state consortium, you have to always do your due diligence and make sure you're checking all the boxes. And thankfully, that was one of the early boxes, and it didn't check. So if we could have utilized this, we could have, it just opens the purchasing options more for the state, or for the town. So that is a change I do recommend, and that's all I have.
On that, that's one of the things that we were working on a few months ago. One of the other things is the length of time for an RFP to be out. It was suggested a minimum of 21 days. I suggest a minimum of 30 days before it's acted on. So that will give the time to advertise, and also the number of places to advertise. Grant picked out a couple of places where that's beneficial. I know that there is a contracting, consolidated contracting website that both the union and non-union members go. We should also include that in the procurement policy to make to best value. Yeah.
Well, why don't I plan to put a draft together for discussion at the next work session? Okay.
Mr. Attorney, there also was the notice of stipulation of discontinuance between I-Square LLC and the town of Arundecoid.
Yes, I wasn't directly involved in that, so that's a good point also.
Can you say that again, please?
The matter of the town of Arundecoid versus I-Square LLC was concluded with a notice of stipulation of discontinuance, so the matter is concluded. All elements of the settlement agreement have been completed.
So my understanding is that was a code enforcement matter.
And where do we stand with the historical? The 690 Titus, is that concluded totally? Or are we still in court with that at all?
I guess I don't know I don't have any knowledge of that.
Hopefully, yeah.
Just gonna say, to my knowledge, that concluded with the sale of the building.
Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, seems like we have some minutes to approve? No. I'm sorry, I'm Madam Controller, I skipped you. Financial report?
Thank you. The 2025 financial results for the town as of April 30th. 33.3% of the year has elapsed, and the town's total expenses are higher than budget at 35.3%. The equivalent expenses are $15,043,000 and break down in this manner. Encumbrances, $2,092,000, and actual expenses, $12,952,000. Encumbrances result from the departments committing to services, supplies, and commodities that will be needed throughout the year. The general fund expenses are higher than budget at 37%, or $10,165,000. The breakdown is actual expenses, $8,755,000, and encumbrances, $1,411,000. Included within the encumbrances of the general fund are legal fees and the emergency medical services contract. Jointly The expenses in the highway funds are $2,057,000, or 34.4% of budget, above the 33% of the year that has elapsed. Actual expenditures equate to $1,559,000, and encumbrances account for $498,000. Outstanding encumbrances include equipment, parts, fuel, and salt. Expenditures in the library fund are above budget at $1,130,000, or 38.8%. This is attributed to the debt service for the annual bond payment, principal and interest payment for the consolidated library, which were made in April. The unfavorable impact of those line item expenses will level off by year end. The sewer fund expenses of $1,094,000 are below budget at 27.7%. The breakdown of expenses is actual expenses, $961,000, and encumbrances, $134,000. Stormwater drainage is under budget as well at 20.6%, a total of $202,000, with actual expenditures totaling $156,000 and encumbrances of $46,000. Expenses excluding encumbrances for the town, as well as the three major funds, the general, the highway, and the sewer funds, are less than the 33.3% of the year that has elapsed. The actual expenditure percentage, exclusive of encumbrances for the town, is 30.4%. The general fund is 31.8%. The sewer fund is 24.3%, and the collective highway funds is 26.1%. The general fund has received revenue of $15,647,000, or 57% of budget. At the end of April, the town has received $13,010,000, or 100% of real estate tax, and 91.2% of payment in lieu of tax payments. The other major revenue sources, such as sales tax, mortgage tax, franchise cable fees, and per capita state aid, are not yet due. Regarding the entire town, $28,186,000, or 66.2% of revenue and appropriated fund balance have been recorded to date. Approximately $19,366,000 of the amount received is real estate tax. At month end, the library has received $2,827,000 of its budgeted revenue. 75.3%, or $4,502,000, has been verified by the highway funds. $3,816,000 has been received in the sewer fund. The stormwater drainage has received 98.8% of its budgeted revenue at $971,000. In addition, American Rescue Plan Act funding has been 100% allocated to various projects throughout the town, including sewers, drainage, parks, equipment, among other services. Approximately 85%, or $19,173,000, has been expended to date. This concludes the financial report for April 2025.
Any questions or corrections or? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, we have some minutes to review.
So the minutes for April 14th are in the packet. I'm still working on the minutes for the April 22nd, so they will be available shortly.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? We have several items to review for a town board meeting. Madam Clerk, can you read the first item?
First item would be public hearing at 7:35. It would be on the matter of adopting a local law to amend Article 7 of Chapter 222 of Town Code relating to the installation of no stopping signs.
We have an explanation.
Yes, this would be the public hearing to amend our town code. This would be the no stopping signs on Lakeshore Boulevard in relation to the Eagle Nest.
Questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
Second public hearing would be on the matter of a proposed text amendment to local law, Chapter 192 of the Code of the Town of Arundecoit.
You have an explanation?
Yes, thank you. This is in regards to amending a portion of a text amendment to two sections of Chapter 192 within the town code. redacting a little bit of information that was originally redacted back in 2023.
Questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
Third public hearing would be on the matter of adopting the Arundecoit 2025 Community Development Block Grant.
Thank you. As stated in my department head update, we're moving forward planning our 2025 CDBG year. We still don't have the allocation, but this public hearing will allow for input from the residents, and the resolution that goes along with it would adopt the plans. So when the allocation is made to the town, we can move forward and comply with all of HUD's regulations.
Any questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
I do have a comment regarding whether the public hearing that's open should be listed at this point in time as a fourth public hearing.
Yes, I think we should list it for now, and, then we can address it depending on when it gets withdrawn, hopefully.
Okay, so public hearing number 4 would be on the matter of the small cell antennas.
My
It's
concern is
open still, so.
that people are going to come and testify.
So let's not include it. I don't think we should include it.
And I haven't advertised or sent postcards
Okay.
out in
So
regards
let's
to
not
it.
include that on the agenda because I'm going to work it out with council, and I don't think that it should be before this board, so let's not include it on the public. If it were to,
Do
yeah.
we do anything procedurally to close the public hearing?
What we could do is at the legislative session, we could close it.
Okay.
That can just be a new business item or something. But like I said earlier, my hope is that it would be rendered moot, and we won't need to do anything, because I'm going to ask them to withdraw that aspect of the application.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 1, authorizing use of fund balance for independent review legal services.
Have an explanation?
Thank you. This resolution is being brought forth in conjunction with Resolution 2024-273 from November of last year, where the town board authorized fund balance use of $5,000 for legal services related to an independent review. The billings have come in higher than the original appropriation allocation, so this would allow for an additional $11,334,000 of general fund balance to be allocated to make payment to the law firm.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Item number 2, authorizing the renewal of an intermunicipal agreement with Monroe County for the supply of electricity and natural gas to town facilities.
Thank you. The town has participated in Monroe County's aggregation group for energy services, both electric and gas. We have been participating, I believe, now for over 10 years. Our current contract will be expiring on August 31st of this year, so this would allow renewal for 5 years to stay in the consortium for those fees.
Any questions, comments? Madam Clerk?
Item number 3, authorizing an employee to attend the New York State Public Employers Labor Relations Association Conference in Saratoga Springs, New York, on July 8th through July 10th, 2025.
Explanation, please.
Thank you. This would actually be for me. The NISPELRA is the local branch of the National Public Employees Labor Relations Association. I haven't been to this conference since about 2021, I think. It's always good to get a refresher. So I'm just seeking approval to attend this July, and it was budgeted in the 2025 budget.
Thank you. Any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Questions, comments?
I'm really impressed with the topics, so I think you already know a lot, but I think you'll have a lot of really great information to bring back. So.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 4, authorizing the acceptance of a monetary gift from Arundecoit Bay Fish and Game Club to the Arundecoit Police Department K-9 unit.
Yeah, this was they like to try and give just small monetary gifts, so they wrote us a check for $100 towards our K-9 fund, so just want to accept it.
Madam Clerk? Thanks very much for the generosity.
Item number 5, declaring salvage of police motorcycle.
Chief?
Yep, this is one of our 1999s that is blown a transmission. It's been mothballed in the corner, and I've kind of salvaged the parts for it for our other one right there. So it's time to go to a good resting place.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 6, declaring certain asphalt material as surplus property.
Madam Commissioner?
Thank you. This is a blanket resolution that we do at the beginning of each paving season. So what it does is surpluses the millings from when we mill the road. And then we immediately, when we're done, when we have a pile, we put it on the surplus on the online municipal auction. When we keep this process going throughout the summer, they seem to sell better because they're fresh, I guess is a good word.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 7, declaring certain equipment surplus property.
Explanation, please.
This is just another surplus resolution for our general items that are listed on the attachment.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 8, authorizing polling agreement with Monroe County Board of Elections for early voting.
Explanation, please.
Yes, this is an updated contract with the Monroe County Board of Election for early voting. There has been an update since receiving their contract, though we will not have a primary upcoming, just the one in November. So it would just be that change.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 9, authorizing the acceptance of grant funding awarded from Rotary District 7120 and Arundecoit Rotary.
Explanation, please.
Yes, thank you. The Arundecoit Rotary Club approached me a few months ago and wanted to work with us on some grant funding. They would like to give us $4,000, which we have allocated to partner with Autism Up to provide a sensory tent for the 4th of July Festival, which is something we've never been able to do before, as well as some educational programming. We're bringing Zoomobile up to camp this summer, and then some sporting equipment for our athletic programs.
Excellent job. Madam Clerk?
Item number 10, authorizing the supervisor to enter into various contracts with independent contractors from local B-90 staffing, parking personnel, ticket takers, and ticket sellers for various town events.
Explanation, please.
Yes, this is our annual contract with the local B-90 folks. They work as ticket takers and overnight security for the 4th of July Festival, as well as they'll be working our parking attendants for the Hoochie Festival.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 11, authorizing the
I'm sorry. Any questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
Item number 11, authorizing the supervisor to enter into various contracts with vendors for the town's 2025 and 2026 4th of July celebrations.
Explanation, please.
Yes, thank you. 4th of July Festival, these are various contracts, including some entertainment bands and youth programming, as well as our shuttle bus, tent rental and restrooms, and our fireworks display. And I did want to make note that this is for both the 25 and 26 fireworks contract, because 4th of July falls on a Friday this year and a Saturday next year. And they suggested, Young's Explosive suggested that people were booking them 2 years out because it's going to be very busy and highly coveted fireworks season.
Good move. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Madam Clerk?
Item number 12, authorizing a special event license for Erase Annual Juneteenth 5K.
Explanation, please.
So this is their annual event to be held on the 21st, I believe, of June, and all approvals have been submitted.
It appears we have no,
I do have two walk-ins.
okay?
Okay, I believe all the board members as well as supervisor. So it would be item number 13, approving the special event license for the Erase Annual Juneteenth event. So this is held here on campus and all approvals are in. Other than we're still waiting for the insurance, they have everything they need. This will go on the agenda if we get that approval. If not, it will not be on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. And then item number 14, are there any? Item number 14 is the I-Square Summers Concert Series. We've been working with Mr. Nolan regarding getting approvals. We have everything we need from the town departments. We're still waiting for one more item from the insurance company to approve. Hopefully it will be approved so I can put this on the agenda for next week.
When you do have the agenda, will the dates be listed?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. And so this enters for people at home watching and people in the audience, there wasn't a place to add for free discussion for the town board and the staff. This meeting, we came off the dais to make it more of a workshop than a formal meeting, which is why I don't strike the gavel and do other things to begin with. So this is a period of time where the town board and the staff can have an open discussion for items concerning the town that may not fit into the Robert's rules for the agenda, and this discussion actually is allowed in Robert's rules. So with that, do we have we discussed the short-term rentals. Do we want to start there?
So what do we want to do?
Well, I think you made the statement, Peter, that if we move, we have to, right, if we shut them down completely, then we're all ready to do that. If not, then we have a whole nother process to go through.
To extend the moratorium.
To extend it and then come up with suggestions on how we would enforce, et cetera, correct?
Right, and I've circulated amongst the board. I resent it today along with Association of Towns had said that the town of Candidice had what they call the gold standard. So I downloaded that and I sent that to everybody. But the materials also include some other examples. And, I know, for example, there's also one in Penn Yan that you could look at. So if that was the route you wanted to go, really, we need some direction as far as what you want to be in there.
For the people at home, can you give us a summary of the Candidice Gold Standard?
So in general terms, it's a permit system where, you can lose your permit if you violate the provisions of the code. It's kind of in its simplest terms.
One of the other things that came up when I was attending one of the Association of Town meetings was kind of like the way we used to do cap permits, a certain limited amount and that permit was at only 50 or 100 or whatever, and that where we limit with annual renewal the total amount of Airbnbs, anything outside of that limited permit system that the town allows would be a violation.
I'd have to look into the viability of doing that, but I seem to recall that a couple of years ago I looked at I think it's Penn Yan that had a similar provision, and they may have capped it. So there might be some places to look for how other places have done that.
I know the town of Greece has capped the number of Airbnbs that are allowed within their town. And I know the town of Webster has a law that prohibits Airbnbs in their town, and I believe that there's a few other towns that additionally prohibit them, where I think we've had some testimony, or at least maybe written or other, that there's no one that prohibits Airbnbs, but that's not necessarily true. And I do believe though, and the town of Greece's ordinance has a stipulation similar to Candice's, in that there's a permitting process, a review, C of O in essence, a number of regulations that require placards placed in the house, rules clearly presented. And as Airbnbs violate, they are falling off the list, and that list is an ever eroding list of permitted Airbnbs in their case. So
One of the things the town board should consider, or may want to consider, is that if we do a permitted list, et cetera, and one of the things we're gonna bring up for the, when we were going to hire the Center for Government Research, is do we have enough code enforcement personnel to enact our codes and our laws? Right now, we are a town that only responds to complaints. But from the Sonic fire, from several other incidents, should we be more proactive than that? And it's a question that the board has to answer of what is the future enforceability of our codes and our laws? And if the future is to enforce stringent laws from grass cutting to fire, et cetera, then do we have the right structure under code enforcement, building inspecting, and the fire marshal to carry out that, or do we want to expand those departments by one or two people in order to give our code teeth? It's a question for discussion. It's not a statement.
a lot of towns have more revenue that are generated by building permits that allow code enforcement. And, our town, being that it's predominantly built out, I don't think has that revenue source. And, for me, I do think that, if we enact a legislation that allows Airbnbs, which is certainly something we need to consider, that we need to offset some revenue in order to countervene the code enforcement that's going to be necessary. And we've had many attestations about, the fact that, a lot of Airbnb code violations or violations come during weekends, which, we're certainly not staffed in a way to allow that per se. A quick response type team or things like that is not something that we're really geared up for at this point. And one of the things too, I think this board at a workshop had made a decision a way back before we set that hearing that we were going to consider prohibiting, which is why the legislation came forth. We've heard attestations, again, reiterative to some extent, about regulating, and I'm not averse to regulation, but, regulation without enforcement, adequate enforcement, is just not something to me that's sustainable. And, we've talked about the fact, like, owner-occupied units, but, our codes, rules, and regulations already allow people to attest the fact that they live in residences, and I can tell you directly that my neighborhood has 2 houses that attest to that fact, and people do not live there, and we don't have, a mechanism to enforce that. People sign paper that they live there, and they just don't. And I'm just afraid that, the bad actors are going to continue to get imbued into this whole rules and regulations, and without a way of regulating it or enforcing it, again, we're just creating a situation that's untenable.
Any other comments?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a comment to Peter's point. Logistically and enforcement-wise, to me, the cleaner way is just to abolish the Airbnbs for the reasons that we're having this conversation. Enforcement is the key here, and we've had conversations with the chief about his opinion on this also. So again, the cleanest way, as far as I'm concerned, is to move forward with the code already in place. And that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
If we keep the code in place the way it is too, we're probably going to still have some kind of enforcement if people are having short-term rentals, right? I mean, there's gonna be some, not as much, but there's going to be some enforcement that we're gonna need to do.
100%, John.
But it's a little, there's not as much enforcement.
Not as much as if you put a bunch of parameters in there, and how you're gonna enforce every little thing to Pete's point.
Through the course of my research, I presented to Bill and his team some software that allows you to monitor and audit, short-term rentals in your market, and it would be at least a way of being aware of what's going on, and then code enforcement could enact upon that in some way. But, there are new means and methods rather than just, hunting the Airbnb ads to try to figure out who these people are and where they're at. And the cost of that was not super significant. And it's an ongoing database type of software where you can monitor these things as they're happening.
And one of the things that we looked at is upgrading the software that code enforcement, fire, and building inspectors use. Bill, do you see that is something that we can fold into that upgrade process?
So I think the software that Deputy Supervisor proposed that's used elsewhere successfully is an ancillary product. I don't think it ties into the permitting software that we're looking to upgrade to. Just listening to the feedback, regardless of a ban or a partial, however the board goes, there's going to be enforcement no matter what we do. I don't believe the courts are here to answer to the court process, but if it goes down the road of enforcement, it will end up in the town courts, and then it will be beyond anyone, here's ability to enforce, which I know can be a frustration in a lot of our code enforcement matters, is once it gets to that point, it's up to a judge to decide where it goes from there, so.
I think the judges rule on the gray areas, but we might, if we are law, as much as black and white, it's.
Right.
It's.
Good point, Pete.
Are there any other topics that you'd like to discuss or have questions for the staff?
So I'm not quite clear on where we're landing.
I think we landed in total enforcement. He's going to research to find out if there's a question of equal protection clause, which we have to discuss in private. And the third thing is, you suggest maybe not a 6-month moratorium, but maybe a couple months. Gives us time to give it. I just think a 6-month moratorium is too much.
I'm not sure anyone had suggested that. I think we were suggesting one more conversation.
One more conversation, okay. So one more conversation then.
Which perhaps would put it out 2 months.
Okay.
Because if we made a change, we'd have to have public hearing.
Right.
Right.
So in 2 months, we will have a hard, fast decision to what to do with additional 2 months of legislative research that we have to do. Would you?
So tell me again what your concern is with the equal protection. Is it the issue of the residency?
The issue of residency and already denying, can you limit who has the right to do business? Comes under the Commerce Clause.
Right, that's the dormant Commerce Clause issue.
But if we eliminate totally, then we don't need 2 months. We didn't need anything, right?
You already had your public hearing on that, so you could enact that next week.
On that next week. Okay.
Well, we need to have some decision on the board to publish an agenda.
Right.
How about we take Ann's suggestion and do 2 more months? Unless you're ready to go. I'm ready to go either way. I've studied this up and down, left and right. So right now it's really.
Well, so I guess you could maybe poll the board on if there's a majority that wants to do the total ban, then it doesn't make sense to kick the can further down the road.
Right.
But if there's a desire to craft a code that is similar to these, special use permit type codes, then, that would take us a little bit of time on the staff and attorney side, but 2 or 3 months might be what we would need for that.
And with regard, I just want to mention for procedural purposes, with regard to the resolution that was walked in, it mentions extending the 6-month extension on the moratorium. So I don't know if, because you're changing, this would be for the town attorney, if you're changing the wording of the 6-month, I don't know if that would require a public hearing or not, if you're going to change it to the 2-month extension.
That's a different question.
Okay. So
We could talk about that offline.
okay. I just didn't know.
My copy or is it?
No, I don't know, I guess
I do.
Okay, we didn't, that's why I didn't put on the agenda, to have this conversation. So
So-
when is the moratorium end? Does anyone have a hard, fast date?
Well, so here's what, you know what?
May 18th, I believe,
If you
ish.
adopt this, let's say you adopt this and the moratorium then extends another 6 months,
You could still,
right? If that's what you adopt, then one of two things is going to happen. You're going to pass, regardless, you're going to pass a new local law. And that new local law is going to be passed before the expiration of this moratorium. So as part of that new local law, you have a section that says, we abolish the moratorium, or you can end the moratorium in that local law that it enacts the legislation. So you don't have to just, it'll be 6 months because that's what's out there, but, it's not going to take that long. And it would be, as part of any legislation that gets passed, you repeal the moratorium.
right.
Okay, so I want to make sure that everyone's being heard, and 2 months, you feel comfortable, or a month?
I think she's talking about,
I'm asking you.
No, that's okay, go ahead, Mr. Attorney.
well, I think it's just because this is already drafted to be 6 months, and we don't want to monkey around with the need for we don't want to address the question about the public hearing if you change it from what it's already existing. 2 months, you could do the 6 month, and the
And then-
practical effect is going to be, it's going to be done in 2 or 3 months when you enact whatever it is you're going to enact. You could decide next week, you know what, I think we don't need that time. We're going to adopt a total ban, and then we would just tweak that legislation to add a section that says we repeal the moratorium.
Okay.
So my understanding is this will go on as a 6-month extension on the agenda.
Correct. And then next month, we need an item to discuss this, whether or not to vote. Let's put it on, I would say we put it on
Well,
June.
Well,
I think maybe polling the board, that may, if there are enough votes,
If you want to ban it,
yeah,
you might know
right.
tonight.
Madam Councilwoman?
I am not, and I am not in favor of banning, and I haven't been in favor of banning. I think that we do not have a good handle on who's out there, but I am, if we move forward with allowing Airbnbs, I am very much in favor of tightening everything up. The permitting, if there are people who abuse that, the highest fines possible. So that's where I am. And I do understand, we had talked about residency, and I do understand, that's where I had landed also, but I understand that is not something that's enforceable, so I don't even think that we talk about that.
Well, there's a risk.
Yes,
We don't know for
I am.
sure about that, but.
Yes, I am. So I'm not in favor of pushing that like I was, because I have a better understanding of that now.
Mr. Grant?
So I feel we've been dealing with this for an awful long time. We had a survey. We've heard the public input, and I'm in favor of 100% ban in Arundecoit for Airbnbs.
Mr. Protocol?
I'm in favor of banning as well.
Mr. Wayner?
I'm in favor of banning them.
So it seems like the board's going to move to a complete ban of
What about
Airbnb.
your,
I'm going to remain neutral on this. We have three to one in favor of banning. So it's a moot point.
Well, I think
think
the
at
people
the-
would
at
like
the
to hear the
time-
supervisor. What do you want
Time
to
of
do?
the actual vote, you would need to.
Yeah, at the time of the vote, I'll give my opinion. So that's the direction we'll move to.
transparency?
What is it? What is your, I want to know what,
You have to poll the board. You're
You're
saying
part of
you're
the board, you should be,
And now I'm part of it. Okay, so we studied this extensively. Most of the residents felt that we should ban this totally. I am somewhere close to banning, but more in the middle. I understand the young couple who's struggling making meat. I understand the elder family who rents out from the home. So there is a middle ground here. So I guess I'm more on the side of Ann Cunningham, that we should look at all options, look at the gold standard of what's been done in the community, and I'm all about best practices. So if the best practice means a ban, then we ban. If the best practice means that there's a way forward, then we can find a way forward to allow our residents economic freedom. And I'm all about economic freedom for everybody, and not being dictatorial. I'm also about building neighborhoods. If it affects neighborhoods, that's it. I think that we should do a limited number of Airbnbs, come up with a number, and that is the fixed number, and also fixed locations. Outright ban where Airbnbs cannot go in our community, so that we can build better neighborhoods. So that's where I'm at, looking at best practices from around the country. I read information from at least 20 different states on this, and that's where I'm at.
So, we were at that point like a few months ago where we had all of the information seemingly when we crafted a law outlining a ban because of, we polled the board then, I believe, and it was nearly unanimous, if not unanimous. But, while I agree with you that is a course of action, but now we're like kind of backtracking on what all the information and revisiting everything that we've seemingly done before us.
I'm in supporting what the people want mainly, and look like the people want a full ban.
I'm in support of what the people want too, and I mean, people seem to indicate that they wanted a ban. And I think that if we want to go back and study it again, I mean, then we're just revisiting the study that we did before.
I don't think that we should study this anymore. I think we've studied it enough. I think we've heard from enough people. The only question is for those people who have had successful Airbnbs, do we punish them, and how much are we economically hurting our residents? And if that question is, I've been in economic hardships too. Something falls through, I move on to something else. Not to be cold or blind about this, it's just really hearing all parties. I think we heard all parties. The community is on the side of an absolute ban. There is a slim way forward, but do we have the capacity to add the enforcement piece to make that slim way work? And I think the answer is no, we don't. But I'm interested in exploring whether or not we can make that slim way work under strict regulations and conditions.
Well, before the moratorium, we'd had a registry for everyone that wanted to have a short-term rental. So we know who is registered. Correct? I mean, we didn't.
We know who's registered, we don't know who has Airbnbs.
Right.
And that's the problem that we have, because we're short on enforcement. We do not know how many Airbnbs are there. Like I said, I'm driving around and I'm seeing realtors advertise a location fully furnished as being Airbnb on Culver Road, and also several other places throughout the town. So people are not registering the Airbnbs. There are Airbnbs that are illegal, in my opinion, that should be shut down. I'm for a very strong enforcement side, where there's no leeway in the maximum penalty allowed under law. I think it's $1,000 a day. That's kind of, if we do find a way forward, if there is a way forward, to meet with our residents, then the costs of violating that way forward should be severe and should be permanent.
I just feel like we did all of this research, all of this polling, there was the meetings with the public, and the conclusion was banning, and we didn't do any work as to how we could allow them. And now, we're saying now maybe we should look at how we did allow
No,
them.
we did do work to see how we allow them.
Any proposed law come forward?
I sent you, I'm sorry, if, maybe I'll resend it again. I got notices from Airbnb of a way forward.
Airbnb wasn't a model law, a model legislation, it's just a bunch of facts and figures.
Association of Towns, and there was a third piece, I could be wrong. I think I sent you a third piece on that also throughout the year. Or maybe it came from, so there was other options other than banning that we provided, but the people want to ban it, that's what I hear.
So I think we have our answer.
It's 3-2, that's that majority of 3 says ban, so 2 ban.
So we'll have to bring up that local law next session, I guess.
Wasn't that left open the last meeting?
Yes.
So it's still, I believe that should have been on,
The public hearing was closed.
okay.
Yeah.
The resolutions were tabled.
Right, so
Take them off the table.
take it off the table and, yeah. I don't think we need to make it, we didn't need to make any changes to that.
We would need to make a change to the zoning code,
Right,
related but
regarding the
unrelated.
hotel definition.
Yes.
So we should probably start that process too then,
Yeah, we'll call for a public hearing on that.
yeah. But there's no reason why we can't.
And just for the board's knowledge, that moratorium extension was drafted in the event that we needed to further discuss this for however long. That was just as an emergency. If the ban is not the decision, we would at least be covered with the extension of the moratorium. And the 6 months was just the arbitrary 6 months from before.
Thanks for that, appreciate that. Any other discussion points?
So with that, is it going to be on the agenda to do the extension, even though the board is leaning towards the ban? So this resolution will not be on the agenda for next week, okay?
But the resolution to adopt the local law will be taken off the table. It'll be taken up for action,
Next week.
right?
I can resend that one from the April, it was, I have it here, April 22nd was the original resolution to adopt that proposed local law with the attachment of Exhibit A. If you want me to resend it, I can, to everyone.
You should resend it.
Seeing there's no other discussion points? Our regular town board meeting is May.
We need to go in executive session for these personnel matters. You guys agree?
I cannot do an executive session tonight. I have a wake to attend that I'm very late to. If you want to schedule one after next,
We don't want to wait much longer.
okay, then I'm not going to be at the executive session.
Can we still
we still
adjourn
have
into
one?
executive session?
It's my personal,
I'm asking the town attorney, thank you.
it's my personal staff, and by statute, Mr. Attorney, I determine my personal staff. This is involved more than just hours, so I would like to schedule a separate meeting so that I can go to my wake. I already missed 2 of my sister's funerals dealing with your issues. So 2 of my sisters have died. I'm not waiting for my friend's funeral again. The regular town board meeting is May 20th.
Again,
But to answer her question, you can still move into executive session, but, it is his staff that.
I don't think it would be productive without the supervisor there, because what we're requesting
I
is
just-
actions by the supervisor related to his staff.
I wanted to ask the question.
Well, then we'll do it Tuesday night at our board meeting. We'll go in executive session on this matter.
The regular town board meeting is May 20th, 2025 at 7 PM. The next workshop meeting is June 9th, 2025 at 4 PM, followed by the regular June 17th, 2025 meeting at 7 PM. This concludes the workshop for 12 May 2025. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.